Hi and welcome to the Hadassah Collective Podcast. I'm your host, Claire Marrinan. The Hadassah Collective is a unique wellness-centered community created in and inspired by India, the birthplace of holistic health disciplines. The Hadassah Collective Podcast brings together a carefully curated selection of my most trusted and inspiring innovators from every area of the health and wellness space. I invite my guests to freely share their gifts, their wisdom, their journeys, and their diverse points of view, discussing a vast range of topics including shutdown and self-isolation strategies, integrated diet and fitness, yogic science, modern mental health, and holistic lifestyle, all to inspire you with relatable tools to help you consciously customize, support, and expand your life. In this week's episode, I'm speaking with Samiksha Shetty. We are discussing disordered eating, in particular binge eating disorder, body dysmorphia, and also unrealistic body and beauty standards within the yoga community. Hi, and welcome to the Hadassah Collective, Samiksha. So happy to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been a tough year like for everyone, but I'm happy to be here too. It's my first podcast.
Amazing. We're so excited to be your first of many, I'm sure. So why don't you just give our listeners a brief overview of who you are, what you do, and how you got started on this path?
My name's Samiksha Shetty. Just to say that again, I'm brought up in Bombay. In a normal middle class family, grew up in a normal middle class family. I think my mum put me into yoga when I was around 10 years old because I was a very kid who had a lot of energy. So to just contain me and like calm me down. And I actually liked it because I was decently flexible at that time as a kid because you're still more open as a kid.
Yeah.
So I liked showing off. So I think that's how I got into yoga. But I never really thought that would be a career option as per se, like ever. Like never ever. It was just like gym time or let's show off time. It never meant at that moment anything holistic or anything to do with what I feel right now about yoga.
Yeah, amazing.
So basically that's how I got into it because of my mum.
Your mum got you into it to try and calm you down. I think that's amazing. I wish more parents would do that before putting their kids on medication and things like that. That would be so good. But describe your early life. So you grew up in Bombay, and what did that time in your life look like? And how did, apart from just your mum bringing you to yoga, how did that sort of lead into this path?
While growing up, I was a broad-boned girl, always been a broad-boned girl. And if you've seen Indians generally, they're very petite, they're small, they're not tall, as at least the major general population is, a little tinier. So I've always, I think, grown up feeling a little big, not fat, but big.
Yeah.
You know? So I think I always had that in the back of my mind. And also growing up in a family, my mom was gorgeous, is gorgeous. So I'd always be like, oh my God, why? Because she would come to school and they would be like, oh, is that your sister? And I know for a fact they generally meant it. And it wasn't just a saying because I knew what I'm seeing. So I think a lot of that plays on a kid's head also. Also having growing up, I stayed in a very, in Andheri East, in a small colony, not where I am right now, not where I'm blessed to be right now. In a smaller house with many more people. We didn't live in a single unit. We had other families staying with us also. So I think I was a bit neglected while growing up because of family issues happening. Also, when I was growing up, I went through sexual abuse. I don't want to go into how, when, how, because it'll take away from the progress of the story. But I think this, with being insecure by myself also, just added a lot. So the yoga unknowingly actually helped me, though at that time I didn't know. I was just like fooling around with the practice.
You didn't have that awareness at that time, but like all of that, maybe getting lost in like such a big family and so many things going on, the kids can kind of sometimes get brushed over. And then when something traumatic happens to you and you don't like necessarily maybe get the attention that you need, or maybe you couldn't even get that. Maybe it wasn't even possible at that time. It all adds to that. So that's amazing that you kind of had that outlet. God bless your mum. Of yoga. Yeah.
So I'm also a lawyer.
Yeah.
So
I
they
didn't
do
know
not
this
say
about
God bless
you.
my mom because they were like, oh my God, you're leaving law for yoga. I was like, Mom, you put me in it. You showed me this could happen.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that you were a lawyer. That's incredible.
Yeah,
So we'll talk
I am.
we'll talk about that. So you obviously went off and studied law. And so how did that unfold? How did from being a lawyer translate into becoming a yoga instructor?
So basically, we are supposed to know post 10th grade what we're going to do. It's not like abroad where you get to choose certain subjects to get a feel of what you want to do. You're just supposed to bang on, choose, okay, I want to do this or that. So I chose to do my 5-year degree in law, and not because I wanted to, because I would be very good at fighting according to my parents, and they were like, do law. And I think also, sometimes families just set it up for you in your head. And because I didn't know what else I was good at or wanted to do, I knew I played a lot of sports in school, but I don't think that was ever given as an option. Even yoga or teaching would never be an option. I remember when I told my family I wanted to do yoga, they said, so you want to become a gym trainer? I'm like, no, I mean, that's not bad, but that's not what a yoga teacher is.
Yeah.
So I think did my 5 years of law. I put on a lot of weight during that 5 years because I neglected my practice. I didn't practice during that time, barely. I would go out partying. We discovered the partying world. We come out from school, discovered everything, the junk food that mom doesn't know you're eating in college. So I think I put on 13 to 14 kgs
Wow.
in not those 5 years, between those 5 years.
Yeah.
And towards the end of the 5 years is when I realized, I got PCOD. I started seeing stuff, acne on my face, just generally feeling low, depressed, because the shit you eat shows in your head,
Yeah.
it transpires.
Yeah.
So I think thereon I started feeling really bad. So I started getting back to yoga towards the end. And then I got a job, and I was working as a lawyer. And I remember I was working in this production house where everyone was damn cool. So I didn't have to wear a suit or anything. I could go in my pajamas, which was the best thing ever because I would just go sneak into the back, do some yoga between break time and the 10-hour shift. And I realized that 5-10 minutes was so good compared to my 10 hours of work. So I started teaching in my building, where we say right now is like it's a colony, right? It's a society of people. So I started teaching in my building. I said, please, very minimal fee. Just tell me if you like it. Just trying to experiment as to what I'm feeling, why am I feeling this towards yoga. And I realized that 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. was the highlight of my day, the teaching, compared to the rest of my day that I was sitting in front of my laptop and staring at a screen. So I think that's what made a difference in me. Also, I went to Auroville.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of this place. It's in close to Pondicherry. And I met few yogis there because my best friend stays there. And I was just so like, oh wow, this exists. You could be a yoga teacher. Till then I was like, that's not a career option.
Yeah.
So all this just compiled together within a year of me working, and I was like, I'm done. Cannot do it.
How interesting. Yeah, I find Auroville a really interesting place because it's such a different way of life, and it's such an interesting way of incorporating people's skills. And I think it's a fascinating place. Definitely a place where you go for an awakening moment.
Exactly.
Or even just to observe that there is another way of life outside of this sort of boxed life that we believe exists. And I think it's not a bad thing either. I know that your parents would have absolutely wanted the best for you and to give you the best opportunities in life. And that's why they directed you to a career like law. But I think it's interesting that you are having these symptoms in your body as well, and you were also like not nourishing your body. There was like, it feels like there was a disconnect at that time, that you were not following your path that really lit you up,
Yeah.
and you were also sort of separating yourself even from your body. And and then you started getting acne and things like that. Many people that we've had on the podcast have had these very similar stories where they've gone down that road and gone, oh my God, I've created this life for myself, and now this is not what I want to do. So hats off to you for stepping out of that, because many people do not.
Thank
But
you.
tell me about any difficult, like rock bottom moments or dark nights of the soul that you faced along the way, that you really think shaped your path and led you into this path, and have made you a really great yoga teacher.
So, one of the battles that I've fought all my life, which I didn't know was actually a battle when I was younger, I was just fighting it and not even knowing it was. I have an eating disorder, which people in India don't consider as eating disorders, sadly. Uh, it's called binge eating disorder. You could also call it as bulimia nervova, because when you overeat to a degree of, say, 7,000, 8,000 to 10,000 calories within a few hours of your day, and then purge. And purge doesn't mean vomiting. It could be over exercising, it could be over dieting, that you're going into directly 20 hours of intermittent fasting the next day,
Yeah.
or 4 hours on the treadmill, trying to burn the damage done. So as a kid, I didn't know. It started with just binge eating, where I would, to make myself feel better, to make myself feel more comfortable, more secure, I would eat. I'm from a South Indian household, so I would eat like 10 dosas. And suddenly that kept increasing. And at that time, I used to play a lot of sports, so you couldn't see it on me. And I wouldn't think it's an issue, because I was like, we Indians like just say, oh, we are from a good, healthy family.
Yeah.
But later on, once I joined college, when the sports stopped and the chilling and the partying started, I think that's when I started seeing my weight gain of 13 to 14 kgs, the acne, the PCOD. Kept falling sick, didn't know why. There was just body was malfunctioning,
Yeah.
Also, if you're having up to 7,000 to 10,000 calories in a day, that's over 1.5 kg. That's around 1.5 kg, right? You can easily. So people were seeing me one day and they're like, oh, you're looking skinny. They'll see me just 2 days after and they'll be like, why are you looking 5 kgs fatter? And I'm like, I've had a 3-day binge.
Wow.
And I couldn't do anything about it. So I think that was one of my main struggles. And it's not that it's gone. It's an ongoing process, It's something that you have to fight the urge every time, because after some time, I think these disorders are more of a habit that your mind creates than the actual disorder. So I know I had to open up to my triggers, understand. I think yoga came in there, where I tried to feel my breath. Because when you get riled up, the breath is the first thing that goes. So just understanding my breath. Also, while practicing, I would realize how heavy I was feeling, how nauseous I was feeling, all the toxin, because yoga has a lot of compression of the belly, right? You're pulling, sucking in the belly. So I would automatically feel like these burps and toxic, feeling in my chest and my mouth while I was practicing. I'm like burping in practice and I'm like, oh, what is this? I'm not even eating right now.
Wow.
So I think that's what pushed me into yoga, and it's still helping me, because triggers what happen in life. For example, if a family member falls sick and I have to be the caretaker, all those things are triggers, right? Those are stress triggers. And that 1 hour a day, if I start my day with yoga, I just feel at least I'm setting the tone for the day.
Yeah.
So
Starting the day with mindfulness, and starting the day in that centered space, so that you can sort
Exactly,
of
exactly.
handle what's coming.
There are some days though I just wake up and go to the fridge and eat something, and then it goes on just like that. So that's why I realized that the start of the day so matters, because the days I wake up hungry, I know that day is just like gone. My eating disorder will devour my day.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think that's when I realized discipline is where my yoga came in, and detachment is one thing that yoga teaches you, right? Detachment from life, emotions, your vessel, your body, your own practice. I'd come to a point where it becomes so compulsively obsessive about my yoga also. But yoga also tells you that you shouldn't be attached to even that. That even if that can't happen, that's fine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think that's why.
I have many friends as well who spin that into, and even I myself have done this, that you take something as well that is really good, like yoga, that's a really healthy practice, and then you become obsessed with it, and so you can turn something that's really healthy into another diversion of your obsession, and you can sort of go, oh, well, I've cured that addiction, but I've just switched it to something else, and you haven't really dealt with any of the underlying issues that are causing those addictions,
Exactly.
and so I think that's really interesting. And how did you sort of begin to identify like those triggers? Because I imagine like how our bodies work or how our minds work more is when we're stressed and we just need to feel better. Like we don't think, oh, what's a healthier way to feel better? We're just like, oh, fridge, chocolate, yes, like that's how we think and how we react. So how did you sort of begin to dismantle some of those triggers and those impulses and replace them with healthier ways to make yourself feel better?
So, going to the fridge and picking up a chocolate is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's actually not bad, right? Having something comfortable, but to the point when you don't know where you're stopping. Like, I remember there was a time, like, I'm not going to list the things I had in one meal because then you all will just like, okay, bad yogi, cancel. So, if I've realized that when my body's uncomfortable, so it was a trial and error thing, right? Because sometimes I thought only when I'm sad, only when I'm upset is when the triggers come. But slowly with time I realized it's not only when I'm sad, it could also mean if I've not slept properly. So any uncomfortable feeling to my body,
Yeah.
even if I'm sick, people eat less, right? When they're sick, I eat more because I'm trying to make my body feel better because I'm feeling so sick.
Yeah.
But the moment I'm really happy and comfortable, I don't even think about food. I'm like, oh, 2 meals a day, I'm good. So when you come to your rock bottom is when you've literally kept food aside all night. I've reached to that level, not right now. This was a few years back. I left an overnight slice of pizza on the floor next to me on a paper, and I ate it the next morning because I woke up feeling like shit. I woke up feeling even hungry than I started because the feeling as to why I was eating it was not quenched.
Yeah.
Because when you're craving something, as soon as you eat that, suppose I'm craving a pizza, as soon as I eat that slice, my mind will satisfy itself.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 slices, maybe 4. Okay, fine, you stop there. But even after you have like one whole medium or large size pizza by yourself, and your mind is still craving food, that's an emotional urge. And this took me a lot of time to figure out. It wasn't a wake up call, it was me literally falling on food one night, waking up and wondering where I am, what am I doing. It feels like kind of a high, which people, don't get it, because when I tell people binge eating disorder, they laugh. They're like, so you eat a lot, just control it. But it's so hard to tell them that think of it as alcohol addiction, because sugar,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Any kind of food triggers your sugar level in your body. It doesn't have to actually be sugar itself.
Yeah. It's anything
Right?
that turns into
Fruits,
sugar.
anything, there's a slight insulin spike. So it's so hard to tell people that eating disorder, whether even anorexia, people will still believe anorexia because if you look a certain way, like if you look skinny to the bone, then people will be like, oh my god, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
But if you look fat, they'll just think you're lazy.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and it's a little bit like telling a heroin addict, "Oh, well, just stop." It's
Exactly.
and
But because food is something we can't live without,
Yeah.
people don't take it seriously because it's something, and it's tougher, right, with food because you have to eat it.
yeah, and it's actually finding that middle ground. You can't go cold
Exactly.
turkey and completely cut food out of your life. So it's really trying to navigate and find that middle ground. And yeah, I mean, I totally agree as well. Like, it's totally fine to have a piece of chocolate and, and eat whatever you want, actually. But the question that I kind of always ask myself is, and it's not just with food, actually, it's with like Netflix or Instagram or, anything. It's
Any
like,
kind of binge.
yeah, wine, is it, is it nourishing or is it numbing? Because you know what, when you sit and share a bottle of wine with your girlfriends, that's nourishing. Like that's soul food, that's soul nourishing. Whereas, I don't know what the number of bottles of wine it would be the definer, but I think it doesn't actually matter how much or how little. It's about, is it nourishing, or are you doing this to check out and numb something that you should be looking at and
I
digging
think
a bit deeper?
you know how we say start your yoga practice with an intention? I think that's anything with life, right?
Yeah.
It's starting anything with an intention. Are you drinking because you want to numb something and not think about something and just get wasted? Or are you drinking to just enjoy someone's company and just be a little in a fun space of mind?
Yeah, exactly. That's such a great practice, actually.
Yeah, and even with this series you're watching, are you watching it just because you want to know what's happening and it's like a cool series, and or are you just watching it while on your phone in the background, something's going on, and then you're watching it again, getting out, 10 hours have passed, you're doing the same thing, you know?
Yeah.
It's just the intent of which you do anything. And there are days even I just put on stuff because I'm so tired with work. But again, if you're doing that to relax, it's different. If you're doing that to run away or hide or conceal anything, it is
Yeah,
not going to do good for you.
even your yoga practice,
Even my yoga, I've had that phase where I've only practiced and practiced and practiced. I go to Mysore and don't talk to anyone in Bombay, practice over there. But after some time, my guru over there in Mysore, Bharat Shetty, told me that you are so obsessed with your practice now.
Yeah, you've become attached to your practice.
Yeah, and there are your limitations, right? At that time, like suppose my body's not ready for it, I will not be able to go in a handstand or a headstand or whatever asana that I'm focusing on. But I'm so obsessed with my practice that I want to reach that level. But
Yeah.
again, understand, okay, maybe some things are not meant for your body. Some things you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So I think that's one thing that everyone has to realize. Even when we go partying, I've seen people now party 10 days in a stretch and they'll be like, fine, but some bodies can't take it.
Yeah.
But I think you still try to push. I've been there again. I feel like I'm saying a lot of I've been there's. But
I think a lot of people can
city
relate.
life makes you do.
Because this is one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, actually, in terms of yoga, is this, I'm really sort of, I don't want to say against, but I really don't want to buy into personally, and I also don't want to promote this sort of idea of what we've turned yoga into, and this idealism of this very puritanical, perfectionist lifestyle of, we have to eat everything this correctly 100% of the time. We have to get up at 4 a.m. and practice, and we have to at least meditate for 2 hours a day. And, we have created, the wellness industry, I think, has created this image of what it looks like to be a spiritual person, what it looks like to be a yogi, and physically what it looks like to be a yogi. And it's almost branded this as this is the yoga body and this is what you are attaining to. And the reality is that is not what yoga is about at all. And it's also not realistic because all of our bodies are different. We're all different shapes and sizes. And as you said, you felt like when you were younger, you're much taller, broader boned. And have you ever felt that you didn't fit into that specific yoga body, that stereotypical model slash, supermodel? I mean, we have it in Australia a lot.
Yeah.
Everybody looks like a supermodel and then they go to Mysore and they're super flexible. And, have you ever felt that you didn't fit that mold and, met other people that didn't fit that mold?
I have met other people who don't fit that mold, but it's bad of me to even say there's a mold, right? Because then I'm actually realizing who fits, who doesn't. As I've always been a broad bone girl, and I put on weight very easily because of my PCOD and because just generally my binges, it's still not gone, right? There'll be 6 months I'll be fine, and then there'll be one day that I couldn't hold it in. So I do put on weight very easily, and now quarantine, corona, we're all sitting at home and just, devouring our feelings and lives. So I have realized this. People have come and told me, oh, you don't have a yoga body. And I'm like, and I couldn't even ask her what is a yoga body, because in my head I used to feel that too, but I never really said it out loud because people would say, oh, you look as if you're a sports girl. Maybe you'd play like football or volleyball or one of these sports where it's like, and not like something as gentle they would think yoga would be. And I would just be like, I don't know, guys. Like, and I would see the girls around me in my batch when I would go for yoga, and they're all really petite, and they have this same, like, a similar structure of body type, which is very light, and they can flow through everything, and it seems so beautiful that they're just dancing in their poses. And there I'm like, coming like, stomp, stomp. I'm like, that's cool. That's all right, because I've been a Bharatnatyam dancer since I was a kid, and in Bharatnatyam, which is an Indian dance form, you have to literally stomp your feet on the ground to make a noise. So for me, that was like a very contrary thing to yoga. And I remember people would come and tell me that, and I'm like, but how do I change that? They'll be like, oh, you don't have a yoga body type. I'm like, okay, how do I change that? People would come and say, oh, you're doing this pose, but look at your arms. I'm a broad girl, I'll have broad arms. I can't have disfigured arms in compared to my shoulders or my hips, and even generally, I know people in cities are very, I think, so much about how a person is perceived by their looks. Like, they would never even consider there might be, oh, the person might be sick, or the person might had a hard month. That's why the person's put on weight. But you have to look a certain way. Your education takes a back fall. The ways you can teach takes a back fall. It just pertains to, oh, she looks fit, so maybe she can make me like that.
But I think these stereotypes, sort of, especially in yoga and wellness, need to be sort of dismantled and set aside, because I think it's really unhealthy to be like, well, I'm aiming for this particular yoga body, instead of being like, I'm going to enter into the practice and let my body do what my body does, and in the same way of eating and things like that. Like, it took me years to actually get out of the cycle of disordered eating when I was in my late teens and early 20s, of just starvation, basically. Like, I would live on nothing, and it took me a really long time to go back and forth between, I'm just going to eat healthy and let my body do what it does, rather than I'm going to make my body be what I have decided it should be. And especially in terms of something like yoga and wellness, like, we're here to make people more healthy. We're here to encourage people to be more authentic and be more healthy, and yet we're sort of setting up these standards of what it is to be a good yogi. And how do you find that when you're teaching? Because I know that you're very open about this eating disorder, and I love that about you, that you're very open speaking about it, because I don't feel like in India people speak that much about it. I think in the West it's much more common, but
I think even if you speak about it, like, literally the most common statement I have, get over it and control. I'm like, yes, that's the goal. Get over it, and control is exactly the goal. But that's not as much as, oh, I didn't get to watch this episode today, I'll get over it, I'll control and watch tomorrow. It's not that easy, It is your mind literally tricking you to believe a certain fact that might not be true at the time. It doesn't mean you're mentally ill, or you have a deep, it could come from anywhere. You could be depressed, you could be anxious, and you're eating because of that, or it could just be because of lazy boredom and you build a habit, right? But you have to just figure where you're coming from. But in India, I don't think they accept it. Like, at least not the people I've told to have had binge eating disorder. They were like, okay. They'll know what anorexia is, not eating. Eating too much, they'll be just like, oh, but control, you'll lose it. And I'm like, but you don't realize. And especially in Bombay, in a city, when you're trying to go out, and then you have to restrict yourself, right? Because everyone's eating everything and drinking everything, and then you're like, no. You're like, come on, eat it, eat it, eat it. And Indians are very forceful with food. Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed that. It's like, eat my food. And I'm like, okay. But then that one bite goes to 10, and it never happens in front of people, right? Because your insecurities will never come out. Like, nobody would know I'm insecure if they met me in a party, right? Firstly, if I entered a party and they came to know I was a yogi, people would just say #bad yogi on my face, and I'm like, okay, but that's my life, guys. So I think it's just how I've seen so many stereotypes break down in my head. People have called me out, oh, you're non-vegetarian. I'm like, that's my roots, guys. And Maybe someday I might become vegetarian, turn vegan, but right now that's not my calling. I have other priorities to sort in my life, in my head, then force myself to restrict another food group.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not good to restrict a whole food group when you're going through an eating disorder. So I don't even think about that. Then comes to drinking. Do you drink? You shouldn't drink. I'm like, it's all about balance. If I'm drinking every day and falling on the floor and not knowing reality versus my drunk state of mind, then yes, it's bad. But if I'm having a drink or two and in a city life where I know everyone around me does it, I and I know my boundaries and I know my restrictions, I think it's fine if you're doing it for fun, which people again look down upon it and all. So
Yeah, I've been at a party before with a friend of mine who's also a yoga teacher, and she's literally stood there and said to me, "Hey, can you just hold my wine a second? I see one of my students over there." And I'm just like, "Oh my
What?
God, this is crazy." But even though that I don't think she was necessarily like ashamed of it, but she just didn't
Yeah.
even want to have that conversation because it's like,
Correct.
and again, it's this thing that we've put up that like yoga teachers are not real people who live real lives. Of course you are. And but I think what this disturbingly leads to is actually a lot of hiding and a lot of shame.
Yes.
You know, like for example, like you would never binge eat in front of a lot of people because you wouldn't
Oh,
want anyone
never.
to say, yeah, like what are you doing? Oh, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that, and or even call you out on being a bad yogi. But it then leads you to do these things hidden away, and it's interesting the example you gave of anorexia earlier on because it's like, oh, you can see when someone has anorexia. Well, actually you can only really see it when they're really far down the road,
They're very far down the
you
road.
know.
Yeah.
And so there is a time when someone who can very easily disguise anorexia as just being disciplined, as being healthy, as being vegan,
Yeah.
as being,
True.
you know, I don't want to, I'm
That's
vegan
actually
also,
very
so,
true.
but it's a very easy
Yeah.
thing to kind of hide. And I think that a lot of these kind of judgments that we have on people, you know, just do lead to a lot of shame. And so I think, especially with a yoga teacher, I think I love this that you're so open about, like, yes, I'm a real person. I suffer from real things, and I'm still a
Yeah.
really good yoga teacher. You know, so
Yeah, because as yoga teachers, I don't think we claim to be enlightened, that we're sitting and we've like gained enlightenment and we've, now we don't need anything in life. We are also fighting with our own battles. We have figured out the thing with yoga teachers is they've figured out their triggers and they work on their triggers with yoga. And because they have gone through their share of triggers, they know how to help others with their triggers.
yeah,
That's big. Most yoga people have been through the most horrific past if you've ever met them.
absolutely.
It's what's pushed them towards yoga to gain something out of it. We are not claiming to be gurus, or we're not claiming to be these enlightened souls who sit on mountains and meditate for hours. In fact, some of my students, I don't even let them meditate depending on their mental state. Not everyone should meditate. Not everything is for everyone.
Yeah.
So people are like, oh, you're stressed, you're anxious, meditate. Stereotyping everything. Meditation cannot help. Some people, when they go quiet, they get more panicky. They start thinking of gazillion more things which is not good for them at the moment.
Yeah.
So everything is stereotyped. There's never anything that, oh, maybe this, maybe that. Everything from meditation to drinking habits to everything. For me, at least my students know, okay, this is my life. I do go out drinking sometimes. I do go out partying. I have my friends that they even know my issues because I speak about it openly so that they can speak out openly back as well.
Yeah.
Because many people come as a fitness level and leave saying, oh my God, I actually needed breathing. So I think that stereotype is something that I have seen a lot of here. If I go traveling, in fact, I never get these kind of things. Oh, you're a yoga teacher, you're too broad, you're too this. I actually don't get that. Because if you see American girls, they're still taller and broader.
Yeah.
They're thin, but they're taller and broader. They still have a bigger build. So I think it's here. I used to have guys come up to me and say, "You're tall for a girl," and I'm just 5'8". I'm not 6 foot. I'm not that tall. If you compare me to somewhere else, And I'll be like, I'm just 5'8", guys. And these are things you're commenting on a person's personality that they cannot change.
Yeah.
You're a big girl. Okay, how am I supposed to shave my collarbones out or shave my ankles out to look, There was a time I remember I would actually bend my knees at a party or something. Like, just slightly, when I was younger, just slightly hinge on the knee, which it wouldn't look bad, but I wouldn't stand up tall as I would today because I would be like, oh, my friends are a little shorter, so maybe I'll just blend in. And now I'm like, forget all that. I'm going to stand up tall. Let me look the tallest person in the picture. I am cool about it.
You're happy with that. And has this pattern of binging and purging, does this pattern show up or this dynamic show up in other areas of your life? Like with work or with other things?
Oh, yes. Yes. I remember there are days that, so you're binging when it starts, it feels like a normal meal, okay, like any other. But slowly, as you're having every bite, you realize that, okay, the head rush starts. Then you start feeling a little more like anxious. You start feeling a little more tingling in your palms. And at that moment, your mind has already told you that you are going to binge today. You have defeated. There's no use of fighting this. And before you actually binged, you feel like you've lost the day. Like there's that feeling. Like I've realized this because I do so much reading on this. It's not even sane to do that much reading on this because I like to know logically everything. Why am I feeling this? And I'd realized that one of these books told me that your mind tricks you into believing you have binged already before you've taken the first bite of binging. So you've already felt you've lost. Then you're like, now what? Just eat.
Yeah.
So you'll actually feel low right before you say okay. And as soon as you say okay, you feel enlightened already and happy. And you're eating.
Yeah.
But by the end of sometimes 7 hours, sometimes the whole day of eating, you then feel so sleepy because of the overdose of sugar and calories in your body. Your eyes are barely opening. And you realize that, okay, now there's no way out. This can't. And I've never puked. I've never put my fingers out and puked. I always try and run. But during this pandemic, or sometimes when you're not available to a treadmill to go crazy on, you realize the next day how it attacks your mind. I would wake up feeling depressed. And by depressed, I mean, say, right after the binge, crying for hours and not knowing why I'm crying. I know it's the binge, but the binge can be sorted, right? You can slowly come back. But why am I howling and crying? Because as soon as you take your binge up, that's how hard you'll fall down, right? Yeah. So the higher you go, the crash is even harder. And the next day, I'd feel my nose would be stuffed. My throat would start hurting because you're continuously using your throat to eat that much. Like if I'm eating, and you're not munching, right? Throughout this process, your body's not telling you munch 20 times between each bite. You're actually inhaling. You're just like putting it in your mouth and inhaling. You're not waiting for the taste. You're not waiting. It's just filling you up. That's the goal. So while this process happens, the next day, it makes you so low, so depressed, that there are times that I've just cancelled all. I'd have 7 classes, but I wouldn't be able to move from my bed.
Wow.
So that's how it would affect my classes. When it came to work, when a person would meet me for the first meeting, they would say, oh, you're perfect, let's do this. That's when I'm like worked out, feeling great, da-da-da. Then maybe something happens, there's a binge. 2 weeks later, they're seeing me, I'm looking like a whole different dress size. And they're like, but we cannot take you. And in my head, as I'm like, how is my size mattering when I can still do the same things, still yoga? I can just, if you don't want me to wear a sports bra and do it, I'll wear a t-shirt. But how is that affecting my performance, my ability? But then I see it, right? People are like, it's how you look. It's how you look as a fitness person. And sometimes I get it. Maybe you would go to the best looking, ripped fitness person and not a lazy, I wouldn't call myself lazy because even when my binges I was running. But if you see a slightly plumper person, you're like, okay, if they can't maintain themselves, how will they maintain me? Correct? And I get it. That is the psychology behind it. That's their thinking behind it, which is very valid sometimes. But also sometimes, I don't know, it's also the background of the other person that matters, I feel. But it's hard for someone to look in that deep when you barely know someone. So yeah, lost job offers.
Do you think it's also like the energy that you're putting off as well? Because like when you're not binging, you're feeling really good about yourself, and then when you've come off a binge, then suddenly your energy is different because internally you're not feeling great. You think that
It
they're
is
picking up
because
on that as well?
suddenly in your head, maybe you've put on 3 kgs, but in my head, I've put on 10 kgs.
Yeah.
Because you're feeling heavy, you're feeling low, you're not feeling yourself. It's you feel like another person has taken over, eaten everything, left your body, and you're left with the mess to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, it's literally like that. You don't feel like after the binge, you won't even feel that it's actually happened. You're actually thinking, did 8-9 hours go in this? You know, and when I talk about it to people, it's very like they don't get it. It's very out of their mind. But I keep trying to talk to people about it because there are so many people who do the same thing.
Yeah.
But they don't know it is an eating disorder because they're like, I like food. Yes, you like food, but it's the difference between liking food and eating food just for the sake of eating. If you're having, say, 10-20 ice creams, that's not calling you loving food.
Yeah.
There has to be a balance. And I know that for a fact is because it's so hard for me, even till date, to maintain that balance.
Yeah.
Because recovery, I would call this recovery. Recovery is an ongoing process. I can't say I've healed now, my binge eating is gone, and I've never faced it again.
Yeah.
There's a year in between that I did not face it at all. But then suddenly some event, monumental event or crisis happens in your life, and then you've come back there. And that space, I think, feels so familiar and comfortable that the first binge will be like, okay, it's fine. Exactly. You'll be like, it's a first binge, it won't happen again, but this is what I needed. It was comfort. Second goes to comfort. Third goes to comfort. By then, you're just doing it out of habit and because you feel it will make your body feel better, but it doesn't. And because of that, I've also got random symptoms. It makes you get throat infections. It makes you get a perpetual cold. It makes you get stomach issues, like really bad stomach issues. And
I'm sure. And I'm sure it also is a hormonal thing as well, or especially when you're hammering, your blood sugar, you're spiking your blood sugar so high, and then you're coming down in a massive crash. That's like,
oh, definitely.
really affects your hormones and really affects then your mood and everything like that. So, what are the different wellness modalities, spiritual practices, psychological practices that you have used to sort of heal, either to uncover the emotions behind the triggers and heal those, and also help you set some healthier patterns in place?
So, I think one of the things that I have realized that I never did is eat slowly.
Yeah,
So
mindful
we
eating.
always eat either when we're on our phone, looking at someone in conversation, or we're looking at the TV. What I try to do is at home is eat by myself, but focus on the food I'm eating.
Yeah.
So I used to never even look at the plate. I would just like gulp. So that slow eating, focusing on how much I'm eating, waiting before I take an extra serving, because is it just because my mind is telling me, or is it because I'm actually hungry?
Yeah.
Understanding that there are days you obviously are a little more hungry than the other.
Yeah.
So you don't want to restrict yourself also. So one is that mindfulness with eating patterns.
Yeah.
Also knowing what kind of food that I've ever binged on. So usually for me, it's like chocolates, or there's this orange Lays. I don't know if you've heard of it, which is like phenomenal in my head. But I try not to have that
Magic
at all
masala,
because
is it that flavor? Magic masala?
it's this hot, sweet, and spicy
Oh, yeah,
look at me.
yeah.
I always take people talking back to food. So it's any kind of preference. It could be a Twix or a Mars, or it could be something that you've actually binged on where you've had 20, 30 of them and couldn't control yourself from saying, no, I'll have it 1 hour later, or I'll have it tomorrow. So those kind of foods you actually have to restrict, because as soon as you have it, your mind triggers the taste.
Yeah.
Your mind gets triggered by the taste, saying that, oh, I know what this is. I know what I have to do with this. So your mind actually doesn't understand what you're doing. It just remembers habits and patterns.
Yeah.
Right? Because your animal brain, which is right below the top part of the functional brain of yours, takes over
Yeah.
with all the survival instincts. So when your body thinks it's going in crisis, when your mind thinks it's going in crisis, it'll binge on your food. right? To make you feel comfortable, thinking that's how you're going to save your crisis.
Yeah.
So that's what your mind does. So mindful eating, avoiding triggers. Now, yes, you're living in a very volatile world. You can't avoid every trigger.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But there are some triggers you can avoid, like eating the specific food or making sure you're sleeping right.
Yeah.
Not sleeping is also one of the major triggers because your body just drops, right? You feel so tired that your body thinks it needs fuel. Because you're feeling tired by sleep, your body believes you need extra fuel.
Yeah.
So your body again goes in survival mode. So your body thinks it has to go in survival mode too often once you're doing it as a habit.
Yeah.
Correct? So second is that sleeping well. Also what you're putting in your body. Even if you are eating too much of the wrong food, your body is going to crave for the right food. But your body will never say, oh, I'm craving spinach because it will give you iron.
Yeah.
Your body will directly say, give me food.
Yeah.
But you have to realize what your deficiencies are. Are you giving your body enough protein, enough minerals, enough everything? Also, overdoing the workout. I've done this. I have worked out maybe thrice a day, sometimes for 2 hours, 1 hour each. And I will fuel myself before. But that excess stress on your hormonal system, on your nervous system, just makes you binge even more. Because it increases the stress hormones in your body. Right? It increases the cortisol levels in your body. So you get very panicky and you start like, okay, now I'm stressed. Again, body will trigger binge. So I think it's all these small things. Whether it came to yoga, I realized the best thing was to just add my yoga practice where I do more vinyasa, where I combine my breath and I combine my movement.
Yeah.
I don't do Ashtanga or Hatha specifically unless I'm in my yoga school because I think I like to go with the flow. Whatever my body feels like, I'll do it. I'll go through the flow, switch with every breath.
Yeah.
Also, what I make sure I do is when I wake up, I do, even if I do 5 minutes, it's fine, but I try to do 20 minutes of breathing, which is, say, alternate nostril breathing, more calming down breathings. And before going to bed, I'll try to do belly breathing. That's something I keep telling my students also is even if you're lying down on bed, hold your palms onto your belly and just inhale, expand the belly, exhale, contract.
Yeah.
Bring all your focus on your belly and just breathe.
Yeah, because that's then taking you out of that fight or flight mode. Because part of the issue in our society now, how we live, is that we're constantly being triggered into our fight or flight mode, and it's doing us a lot of damage. Actually, it's doing a lot of damage to our nervous system, and so that conscious breath is just bringing us back into that space of peace and out of that fight or flight mode.
Correct.
Yeah, so what do you feel have been some of your biggest successes in life so far, and what have you learned from them?
I think one of my biggest successes personally is boundaries. I would never understand boundaries. I would give and give and give to the point that would trigger my binging, eating disorder, mental stress. And I've had anxiety all my life because of all this, right? Because of all this gives you anxiety, this gives you all kinds of triggers. So I think setting up boundaries, because if someone told me, I remember this one time I had a exam and I had to study for it one day before, but my friend needed help, so I left my studying to just help her in something rubbish. Not even something interesting and life-changing or monumental. It was just something stupid. But I would lend out so much of myself because of insecurities, because of my own displaced feelings. I would give out so much that I would go ahead and beyond for people. But now is when I've understood boundaries. I think my yoga practice has helped me with that too, because I've understand boundaries even in my practice. That this is where you can't go. This is how much you can do.
Yeah.
Today, 20 minutes. Tomorrow, maybe you'll be able to do longer.
Yeah.
You know? So that's one thing that helps you even restrict, because the more you're doing it in something that makes you feel happy, the more you can do it even outside of that.
Yeah.
So boundaries is something I learned that. I think yoga-wise also, I used to fight with my practice a lot. Like, I would be like, no, I have to attain this, I have to attain this, I have to attain this. I've understood that, okay, I've fallen sick. If I've fallen sick today, for a few months, my body will not be there. And I've had 2 setbacks in this last year where I have fallen sick, maybe because of my binge eating or because of anything it could be. where I was hospitalized and, I had to come out of it.
Yeah.
So those two instances had really taken me, because I was on steroids and this and that, they had really taken me way back in my practice. That a normal plank position, my arms would like shake to the bone. Like I had to like rest every time I'm doing a 5 minutes practice. And the biggest thing I think in people and yoga, even yoga people, which yoga people think they don't have actually, is ego. And that's the biggest thing, and that's letting go of that ego of I have done this before, so I can and I will do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or ego in anything. I think ego is one of like, it's so hard. It's I can't say I've let go of it, but I've really seen myself pull back and say, no, the ego isn't right. Even when you're fighting with your family or fighting with your friends, or you get into an argument, I would be the loudest voice in the room. I would shut people up. Now I've realized in the last 2 years, I take the back seat. I'll be like, okay, you don't have to always be the loudest room. You don't have to prove yourself you're right. You can take a back seat and not hassle other people around you. That's personally, these are the two really good things that I've been able to contain, is because you always want to prove you're right. You always want to prove your statement is right. And many people do that.
Yeah.
I think mostly all people do that. And I used to do that. And I've learned to just sit back and smile and say, okay, you're right.
Let things go.
That's something. Just be like, cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so tell me, how did you get diagnosed initially with this eating disorder?
Nobody diagnosed me with it, because nobody understands eating disorders. Even the last 2 times I felt sick and I was hospitalized, they told me they mentioned till now it is an autoimmune thing, which cannot, because they don't understand it, right? Autoimmune is something that they don't understand, where your body is attacking itself.
Yeah.
So I'd get these random inflammations on my eyes, my face, foot, and I would just wonder, what are these big inflammations suddenly that I had to rest? And the more I'm reading on eating disorders, the more I'm seeing on eating disorders, it could, okay, and this is actually weirdly in the last month I've read stuff could show that it actually could just be my eating disorder that has malfunctioned for so long in my body that now my body is projecting.
Yeah, your body is saying enough is enough. I can't.
Yeah, because if I'm eating too much, I'll get a throat infection. It's scraping the back of my throat. It's keeping my throat chakra, my throat unhealthy. The same thing, it's going to give me, the acid will lift up. It's going to give me a postnasal drip. It's going to affect my belly. So all this is so, like, most of my symptoms of this autoimmune disease, which may or may not be there, but in my reading, I still feel it is my binge eating disorder, because most of the symptoms that I read, the severe symptoms were out of that. And I do have, and working through a really severe case of eating disorder. So I was admitted, and I remember telling the doctors that they treated my symptoms.
Yeah.
Right? They treated my symptoms. They didn't treat the root cause of why it was happening. And I went through MRIs. I went through 6-7 MRIs. I went through 2 lakh worth of blood tests in one day. And I was just like, okay. And recently is what I read is you can get a sore throat, you can get cold, you can get chills, because you're eating so much, your body is fighting, the immune system fails because you're not nurturing it, you're giving it only crap.
Yeah.
There would be days I've eaten 30 chocolate bars, 8 packets of Lay's, another pizza. There's no nutrition in any of this that your body could work on. Right? So, and mentally also it's draining your body. If your body is in a negative mental space, your body works in a negative way.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you feel depressed, you could also infect your body into something that's not even connected to depression. But because your body is in a negative zone, it is working in a very different line.
Yeah.
It's not working in its normal course.
Yeah, it's interesting because psychologically, like food represents nourishment and represents love. So it's like anorexia is sort of a manifestation of someone who doesn't necessarily believe that they deserve love. They don't deserve that nourishment. And it's almost a case of like wanting to shrink away. And then binge eating is almost the rebellion of that and the grabbing, like, I need more love, and it's both, it's the same thing, it's a lack of nourishment, a lack of true nourishment. And it's funny when you were talking about that, when you said you were younger and you were like, oh, I wanted to be smaller, I wanted to shrink, I wanted, it's almost like your body is rebelling and it's saying like, I'm gonna take up this space in the world, like, and yeah, and so it's an interesting sort of concept, I think.
Yeah.
But so tell me, I know that you do a lot of reading. So tell me who have some of your major influences been either in yoga or different books that you've read on this topic of disordered eating, or in your own personal life.
So in disordered eating, there are a few. There's binge over brain. There's a few on those lines. But I think bottom line, all say the same thing.
Yeah.
All say the same thing, is that your animal brain takes over. So treat that as another person. Whenever you get such thoughts, talk about that thing as another person. Don't think of it you as your true being.
Yeah.
Don't think of it as your essence. So binge eating disorder is when I came to know also I had it, because I would keep telling people that I eat abnormal amount of food. This is not normal. I'm very hungry. Why am I hungry? They're like, oh, you're growing up, you'll need nourishment, you'll need. I'm like, no, but if I'm craving something, I'm eating, like, say, you can't eat 2 large pizzas by yourself and eat 10 other foods after that, right? That's not hunger. So I remember reading these books in yoga. I think one of the people who have helped me the most is my guru in Mysore right now, Bharat Shetty. He's really good and he's so patient. I remember there were times like we students would have breakdowns during our practice. And he would literally counsel us sitting right there. Though he had children at home, wife at home, he's sitting and counseling us at a common ground in the shala where you sit, and he like talk to us and counsel us and actually tell us what's happening in our mind that we can't see as because we're going through it. So he's really helped me a lot. I think Iyengar,
Yeah.
nobody can beat him. Krishnamacharya, all these people, their books are really good and they teach you so much about detachment and understanding your own vessel, then hoping it to be some vessel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So instead of hoping that you become something, understand yourself first.
Yeah.
Because yoga, people always think it is asanas. Yoga is either meditation or yoga is poses.
Yeah.
There is so much more to only than yoga, meditation and poses. Yes, these are important. You're supposed to conquer your body before you can conquer your mind.
Yeah, and the whole purpose of conquering your body is to get you in that space where you can actually
Exactly. So the
your
yoga
mind.
poses are to basically conquer your body, so then you can go to your breath, then you can go to your mind, and it's just like a stepping stone.
Yeah.
But yoga is also the way you talk, the what you eat, what you say, the way you think.
Yeah.
Even the thought process is yoga.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it could be anything, and I think these books have just made me realize more and more that yoga is not a step, because each ideology could be different, right? So many books have so many different ideologies. So I've never had one guru that I'll be like, okay, I'm joining my hands in front of you and you're everything. I would rather take the best of everybody and compile it, right, for my learning.
But I think that is the
yoga,
space that we're in now. I think that is the learning space that we're in, that it's not necessarily finding that one person. And I think you add to this, your teaching as well adds to this, because it's actually more people now are coming forward and teaching from their own personal life experience. And this is how I've navigated these different things. And then you can relate to them, different aspects of that from different people that fit in with your life, and learn from that way, rather than just blindly following one person.
Exactly.
So I think that's interesting.
And so these were the gurus that I was reading about, and these are really famous. I think every yoga teacher reads them before they actually, think about going into philosophy. With binge eating, again, it was first I thought it was emotional eating, which people do. So I thought it was occasional. Then I started reading these blogs. I would type, why am I feeling so hungry? These were the Google searches I would do. Why am I hungry all the time? And then I started reading people who would talk about emotional eating. Then from there, I heard someone say the word binge. So through college, I don't think anyone actually told me it was an actual disorder ever.
Yeah.
I go and tell, I've been for therapy, and I think therapy is something that everyone should do. Even, it doesn't matter. It's just someone to talk to who you feel won't judge you. And in therapy also, when I would tell them, they would be like, okay, so uh, you're eating your feelings, and listening stuff from them also, that your inner child maybe needs that, and so just, I think for me it's been connecting the dots.
Yeah.
For me, it's been all learn with what you're going through, with every emotion, with every fall, with the number. I must have had 10,000 binges by now, from the age of, like, from school to now. So learning with every binge as to, oh, today I was happy. Why did I binge?
Yeah.
Oh, I've not slept properly. I've slept like 3 hours. I partied last night, and now I'm feeling happy, but I'm hungry. My body is craving for food.
Yeah.
So I think it was just trial and error, reading many books, understanding my own body, understanding it's not human capacity to eat this much. It is not what your body requires. Understanding there's a balance between food and food to eat and food for your head.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
understanding that line of how much should I eat for my belly and how much am I eating for my emotions, thought, mind, or any other feeling, or any other uncomfortable feeling. That line is still it's a very small line that you can't see it half the time, but you have to navigate through it. And also sometimes you have to, like, not control that much. I think over control also sometimes leads to the same thing. I've heard of people who over diet and also lead up to binge eating disorders.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's how you binge eating disorders is basically how your childhood is molded, how your mental thought process is molded, how secure you feel about yourself. So it's also how you bring up, like, notice, when our parents were growing up, they didn't know all this. These all things were, like, not even in their thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, eating disorders, what is that? But now that we're so much aware of it, I think it's so important to tell people that this is not weird what you're feeling.
Yeah.
It is not abnormal that you're feeling like eating. I remember there would be parties and dinners that I've left where there is food to go home and eat. I've left a dinner because I couldn't eat in front of people because they were already saying, oh, you're looking big, you're put on weight. And because of those comments, I've already felt hungry and be like, I want to feel comfortable, I want to eat. And I would go home and pig out, but I wouldn't be able to do it in front of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's just trying to be more open-minded now about this, because I wouldn't want anyone to go through so much trial error and so much of trying to understand what is happening, why are they feeling this, are they feeling upset about eating, which is something so normal.
Yeah.
And the more upset you feel about eating, the more you eat. It's a vicious circle.
Yeah.
It just goes round and round.
Understanding and developing that healthy relationship with food. And what would you say to someone who's listening today who's never heard of binge eating disorder, but they're kind of like, wow, she's describing some of the things that I'm feeling and some of the things that I do. What would you recommend that their first port of call would be?
So, for the people who don't know whether they have a eating disorder called binge eating disorder or bulimia nervosa, see how you feel after you're eating. Are you feeling upset? Not right after also, maybe. If you've had a long day of eating, see how you're feeling. Are you feeling upset about it? Or are you feeling, wow, I've had a great meal? Or are you feeling, shit, I need to go to the gym and work this out like for 4 hours? Not like, oh, I'll work out tomorrow, it'll be fine. You're not chill about it.
Yeah.
You'll be anxious about it. Shit, I have to plan a time, I have to do this, I have to get it out of my system now. That's the way of recognizing it. Also recognizing, are you eating at your lunch, breakfast, dinner or snack? Or are you just waking up hungry? Or eating at any time, doesn't matter. Your snack is actually your dinner.
Yeah.
So understanding that. Also knowing that these feelings that you're feeling are actually real. It is not made up in your head. It is not fake. It is not just because you are an overactive, healthy person. It is because your mind is tricking you. And yes, sometimes your mind does that to the healthiest people. You don't have to be sick to feel like this, right? Your mind can play tricks on you because your mind is confused. It's not that your mind is sick or something. Your mind is confused. Your mind is thinking you need to go into survival mode because something is wrong.
Yeah.
Now, your mind cannot tell you whether it's emotionally wrong, physically wrong, or just the outer or internal. Your mind cannot tell you that unless you have the knowledge behind it. So now is when I recognize whether it's emotional, internal, physical, sleep. But initially, your mind will just go into survival mode. I need to feel comfort and I need to feel nice. That's what your mind, and that's why your favorite food will become your binge food, because that gives you happy. it makes you happy. Comfort food.
Yeah.
You know, that's why people sit with tubs of ice creams when they're sad because it's emotional food. So understanding your triggers and knowing that it's okay sometimes to say it's okay. Today I have binged. It's
Yeah.
fine. Tomorrow doesn't have to be the same way. Just because I binged today, there are people who will be like, oh, I binged on a Monday. This whole week is gone. You know, it's okay. Or if you have it binged, like sometimes what happens to me, I've binged for breakfast and I'm like, oh shit, my whole day is gone. Now today I will binge only. It's not even my mind telling me, but I'm like, okay, today I surrender. It doesn't have to be a day, it can just be a meal. And knowing that you can reach out for help because now people are understanding.
Yeah.
People are more open, and even if they are not open, you don't owe people an explanation as long as you're understanding.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times we are fighting with our own process that this cannot be it. I am not this person. I have to be perfect. Perfection, running behind perfectionism is what causes major of our mental, physical illnesses.
Yeah.
It's okay to be a work in progress. It's okay to be not in progress also. It's okay to be just where you are for some time and not going forward or backward. Just be there. You know, I think a lot of time we're just struggling with that. And I know throughout this lockdown, I've been like, I need to lose weight because my activity got cut down in half by sitting at home. Usually I'm running from place to place teaching, physically working out. And here my gym shut, everything. So my activity level was this and I put on weight. And I was like, shit, what will people think? I have to move ahead. And I think that happened in the middle of lockdown. And now I'm just like, it's okay. I'll just say, it's fine. I'm still practicing. I still have my skills. I've put on a few pounds here and there, which is fine, which will go. So coming to the realization that it's okay to be where you are, and at all times you don't have to be progressing to some or the other direction. You know, just give your body some time to be where it is. You don't have to constantly try to lose weight because that triggers eating disorders the most. Any kind of eating disorder where you're trying to lose weight constantly, I would give a suggestion: try to be the same weight. Don't try to lose weight. For some time, just try to maintain your weight. Even if you're obese, even if you feel you are obese and you're not, even if you feel any of these feelings, try to just maintain your weight for some time. Don't try to lose, don't try to gain. Have your 3 meals, have anything you require, but have in moderation your 3 meals. I think that's what's helped me the most. Usually, whenever I come back out of a binge, I'm trying to lose weight. Now, I'm like, I'll have my 3 meals and I'll see what happens. I'll see. Something will come off because I'm not binging. It'll come off. But it'll take some time for my body to get the nourishment. So, get the nourishment first, then think about the weight loss. Brain nourishment and body nourishment.
Amazing advice. And so tell us a little bit about your classes. What kind of yoga and what can people expect from you, from your classes and also your personal private practice, one-on-one practice?
So, I cater to what the student needs, right? Because I can't force my practice and my ideologies on everybody. We are living in a city where sometimes they want to lose weight. So I do trick them into breathing. I do trick them into certain things while they're practicing. Like I'll make them hold a pose and say, okay, now do belly breathing. You know, I'll try to include their breathing during their practice because some people cannot sit still. After a few months of practice, they'll realize, oh shit, I'm actually sitting still now. Because I try to push in the breathing exercises between their practice where they're burning, they feel, because everyone's after the burn. You know?
They want to feel like they've done something, use that.
Exactly. So I try to make them feel that they've done something, which they are doing. But at the same time involves certain things, and my major forte is back bends. Because I feel back bends help you feel so happy. Initially, if you're tight, it is very painful. But eventually, back bends work on your heart chakra. And it opens your heart out and it makes you feel very light. Like I keep telling people, after a back bend class, you'll either cry or feel really happy. If you're crying, it's something stored inside. If you're feeling really happy, that means you felt light, you felt nice. I've had students cry after a back bend class. That's because that's what they're in. Now for a group class, again, it's a sweat. It's a sweat sesh, but I always, again, put breathing towards the end, give a good shavasana. That's your corpse pose where you're lying down, focusing on your body and doing nothing while focusing on your body. You know? I also I'm not only into yoga. Yoga is my main, it's my, my medicine for life. but I love working out in general. I love weights, I love everything. So I also make people, if they are progressed enough and if they need like a particular body goal, because many of them are in the industry, many of them are models, bloggers.
Yeah.
So they need an extra burn. So I also make them do yoga with sliders, socks, or ankle weights, but not all the time. This is just one-off classes here and there that makes them feel a little different. Also, if you're not a yoga person, you will never get used to the idea of doing yoga as a set of asanas, right? There are many asanas, but ultimately that's the bracket. So if you're not a yoga person or a person into yoga like properly because you want to, you get kind of bored. You're like, okay, but I did warrior 1, 2, and 3 yesterday.
Yeah.
I did so I just try to mix it up for them. I try to keep it a little more lively by adding socks to the mix where they have to engage their core even more.
Yeah.
Or I do a lot of kettlebell. So I add a really small kettlebell into the yoga asanas.
Okay, wow.
So adding movement with kettlebell. So not something that will really feel like a gym session, but will still add your breath to your movement.
Yeah.
So I try to do a mixture of that.
Amazing.
So modernizing our yoga
Sounds
for people
super
who
fun.
cannot yoga it.
And where can people find you, just before we finish? Where can people find you and get in touch with you?
So I'm on Instagram. I do reply to students and not students with queries or general yoga queries. I do check my inbox and reply to people because I think that's one way you can reach yoga to everybody, though you can't teach them. I take personal classes as of right now. I don't take any group because of COVID. I teach online on Zoom, only private as of now. But from January onwards, I'm going to be starting a group class for everybody, affordable and nice, and get everyone sweating and breathing at the same time.
Nice.
So yeah, on Instagram, my Instagram handle is Samiksha Shetty 1. So contact me.
Fantastic, fantastic. And you also teach at the Movement Sanctuary, is that correct?
I do teach at the Movement Sanctuary. I did. That's my favorite space of all time. I think most of my pictures on Instagram are from there. It's this beautiful space at Pali Naka, but right now that space is only open for one-on-one students. Like if you book the place and you have a student, you can go there. The group classes have temporarily been stopped because of COVID, and to just be sure, because you're breathing heavily in yoga, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want that happening, at least right now. No heavy breathing.
Vicinity of other people. Yeah. Okay.
Movement Sanctuary is one of my sanctuaries in Bombay.
I hope you guys can all open again soon and be back to normal and back to normal programming soon. But Samiksha, thank you so much. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you've got on your heart that you'd really like to share?
I think we've covered it all. I've spoken so much.
We have. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for being so open and so free to share about everything that you've gone through and ways that you've moved out of it as well. So thank you so much, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Talk to you soon.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and you got some things to take away from our amazing guests' insight. If you did enjoy this episode, please subscribe and also leave us a review. And for more information on the Hadassah Collective, you can visit our Instagram page at Hadassah Collective. I hope you'll join me again for our next episode at the same time next week. And until then, have a wonderful week.